Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our special show Perspective, where we bring you a detailed analysis of all key national and international issues. Now today we're going to talk about the issue of plastic waste management. Now, according to a report on plastic waste management released by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, the global average of plastic per capita consumption is 28 kg and India has a per capita plastic consumption of 11 kg. The CPCB report of 2019-20 states that 3.4 million metric tons of plastic waste is generated in India annually. Recently, Niti Aayog and UNDP India has launched a handbook to promote sustainable management of plastic waste in the country. It is suggested that urban local bodies across the states should adopt the material recovery facility, that is MRF model, and implement it as a public-private partnership model for sustainable management of urban plastic waste. Now, urban local bodies are mandated under the Municipal Solid Waste Management Rules 2016 and the Plastic Waste Management Rule 2016 to manage municipal solid waste and plastic waste at the city level. Now, the Environment Ministry has also recently come out with a draft notification for regulation of extended producer responsibility under Plastic Waste Management Rules 2016. Draft notification published earlier this month specifies the quantity of waste that will have to be managed by the producers, importers and brand owners who generate plastic packaging waste in India. And to understand this entire issue in more detail, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with, we have with us in the studio today Dr. Suneel Pandey. He's Director, Environment and Waste Management with TERI. We're also joined by Professor C.K. Varshney, a well-known environmentalist and former Dean of the School of Environmental Studies at JNU. And Mr. Srikrishna Balachandran is also joining us. He is with UNDP as the Project Manager of Plastic Waste Management Program and involved with that handbook which I mentioned earlier. Let me start with you only, Mr. Balachandran, and let's look a little deeper into what that, the handbook or the suggestions which are coming in from Niti Aayog and UNDP in order to go ahead and deal with the plastic waste management issue.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and very, very honored to be part of the esteemed panel today. We at UNDP, we've been working in the issue of plastic waste management for quite some time now. And things have actually been more aggressively done since the last 3-4 years, I would say, since 2018, where UNDP has started implementing some of these plastic waste management projects on the ground in partnership with the various municipal corporations, and then in line with the guidance issued by the Plastic Waste Management Rules 2016 and its amendment in 2018. As a part of that, UNDP did partner with private sector companies like Coca-Cola and Unilever, who are the primary producers of plastic waste, and how we can include that, be a bridge between the private companies and the much needed infrastructure that's needed to be put in these urban local bodies, so that plastic waste management from a policy perspective can actually be implemented very well on the ground.
Okay.
So since then, with the support of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and the Swachh Bharat Mission, as on date, we've been able to implement the project in 22 states in over 35 cities with various kinds of experience. So with this experience, Niti Aayog was so kind enough to form a handbook of 18 case studies, 14 from India and 4 from Southeast Asian countries.
Okay.
Out of these 14 case studies, we have some of it is our case studies, around 8 and 9 is from the cities that we operate. But we also wanted to make sure that it is not very UNDP centric, but to collate the best case studies from all around the country.
Okay.
So we have taken examples of social inclusion, how to include the informal sector like rag pickers onto the ecosystem, what kind of infrastructure that needs to be put, what is the financial model, what is the awareness creation model that needs to be put, what is the recycler linkage model, what are the technologies that tracking and tracing technology apps that are available. So it's a collection of a very a wide study, so we have kept it selective in number.
Okay.
And we're very thankful to Niti Aayog and things to do that. But going forward, it is very important to take these case studies which are picked up from the ground in partnership with the corporations to implement it further and go forward.
Okay. Yes. So basically, it's a sort of a, assessment of how we can move forward. Various models, various case studies, various scenarios which can be implemented on the ground at a larger scale to deal with the issue of plastic waste. We will look at that in detail also, but let's first understand the scope of the problem here as well. Let me bring in Mr. Varshney here first. Professor Varshney, from your point of view, what's the scope of the problem we are looking at when we talk about plastic waste management and the hurdles or the bottlenecks which we need to go ahead and clear?
I think we have to look into this problem in a more holistic sense, because plastic waste that we are generating is increasing in quantity over the years, and it is quite substantial. In fact, it is about 6 to 8% of the solid waste on an average. And per capita, it may vary from city to city. And as regard the data goes, I think the Goa was producing about 60 grams per person per day. And this is almost double what the Delhi is producing. But the question is that this data collection also has to be looked at very carefully, that how large the sample is, and the variation exists between colonies and also the economics of the people, or at least the economic status of various colonies. So I think there is a lot of difference. And I think this kind of data is useful, but it is not one on which entirely one can rely. This is number one. Okay. So I think we are very much data deficient in many respects. Secondly, we do not know how many recyclers are there, what are their capacities, and how they operate, and whether they operate on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, and so on. There is also a problem that there are various kinds of plastics which are mixed up. And I think that kind of a segregation poses a very serious problem. And the third thing is that the user, or at least the producer of the plastic at the consumer level, is very, very poorly advertised, and they are not very much included in the loop. Although there are advertisements and there are also now and then very useful programs as you are doing. But the fact of the matter is that the population is very large. Their social sensitivities towards plastic are also very different. Indeed. And I think this is a kind of thing in which we have to work very hard, so that all of them can be brought with the kind of commitment that is needed. Because if we do not segregate our waste and properly and honestly, then I think the program and these kinds of guidelines are only very, very useful, but of not much use. Okay. The question is that how do we handle the plastic waste that ultimately gets generated? Let's say it is segregated. What do we do next? So I think this is something on which we have to think very carefully. And one more thing that I would like to flag, that the plastic waste which can be sorted out by hand, either by the rag pickers or by the producer at the domestic level, in addition to that, there is a huge problem of plastic, which is microplastic, and about which I think we have to also worry about.
Okay, indeed, those are the key issues there, and microplastic is obviously a cause of concern, something which has been flagged out earlier also. Dr. Pandey, yes. I'd like to bring you in here. Professor Varshney pointed out several key aspects with the challenges in terms of dealing with plastic waste management or ensuring sustainable management of plastic waste in urban areas specifically. What's your view about these key issues, and any more you would like to add in terms of the challenges which we are facing, so that the solutions can be found out around those to tackle those challenges only?
I mean, see, Vishal, what Professor Varshney pointed out is correct. And there are challenges in terms of collection, in terms of recycling to what quality of plastic finally. Issue is not, though, I mean, we report high level of recycling, around 60% CPCB and recycling agencies say that they recycle 60% of plastic which is put into market and comes out as a waste. Problem happens with the 40% which is not collected and thus not recycled.
Indeed.
and that is something which is low value plastic. So how to incentivize, since source of generation are cities, mostly, though I mean use is also increasing in rural areas because of packaging products, packaged products going wide across the country. How to set up a collection, how to ensure that they are no longer littered, or even if they are littered, they are collected by some agency, maybe waste pickers agency or association, but it's required to be collected.
Okay.
Required to be collected and required to be sorted, required to be recycled, and recycled not as downcycling or an inferior product, but recycled as a, if not possible to upcycle it, then at least to the same polymer from which the products are coming.
Okay, okay. Mr. Balakrishnan, what are the key solutions which your report, along with Niti Aayog, is suggesting? Because there are several case studies which you earlier spoke about, best case scenarios, and some models have also been suggested. So what are the solutions which Niti Aayog and UNDP is suggesting to the urban local bodies to deal with these challenges?
Thank you. I think Dr. Varshney and Professor Pandey did touch upon that. I think we have tried to address some of these, though the issues are multifold, solutions are also multifold. If you can divide the whole plastic waste management into awareness, collection, segregation, pre-processing, processing, and finally recycling. If you divide this whole chain into collection all the way to recycling and bringing it back into the market, there are we have tried to cover one example in each of that, or some very working case studies that are there in each of the cities here available in India. So from the awareness bit, how citizen awareness is very important, and what are the different campaigns that a municipal corporation or a municipality or a city can adopt. From that, what is that collection model that we can implement? We have taken the case study of Goa, where there is a 16 ways of waste segregation is happening, and collection is also happening as per that. And after that, you bring it to the, let's say, an MRF or a material recovery facility where segregation is happening, how we can do the segregation, what are the costs involved in segregation, how much of manpower needs to be put, how that can be run as a business enterprise on its own. Also, how we can include the informal sector in terms of how we can create self-help groups, and that will become also a social movement, like how that can also take that forward as a self-sustainable business model. So after that, then there is pre-processing, where we are talking about various cleaning of the material that is sorted into various categories of paper, plastic, metal, glass, and then after that, how do you connect to the existing recyclers in the market, and how do you maintain the database? So the idea is to touch upon the various various touch points in the value chain, and how, if you look at plastic waste management, you have to look at it in a holistic manner, and what are the different solutions available for us locally within the country, and what is there for us, for each of us to learn and adopt.
Okay, Mr. Balachandran, if you could explain to our viewers also what exactly is the MRF model, the model which the UNDP and Niti Aayog is exhorting the local bodies to go ahead and implement in the PPP mode, material recovery facility model. How does it help?
It helps because if you look at waste per se, if you look at the overall gamut of waste, there are, if you just specifically look at dry waste, for example, even in dry waste, there are like Mr. Pandey mentioned, there are more than 60 categories of materials that are recyclable or recycled because it has positive value. And then there are 40% of the materials which are actually cluttering our roads and landfills and our gutters. So those are the ones that need to be taken care of. So how do we make sure that we also streamline recycling and also make sure that we have very less amount of waste getting to landfill? So that's the whole purpose of material recovery facility, where the infrastructure, which is that you need to make it as a viable business model. The infrastructure, that means the basic land and building needs to be provided by the urban local body or the municipal corporation. We can bring in corporates and private companies to come and invest in because companies are let's say experts in operation. So they really know how to operate their facilities because each of them operate multi-million-dollar facilities. So how do we bring in corporates to basically select the machinery and make sure that how we establish the whole chain in terms of supply chain from collection to operation of that facility that can be handed over or funded by a private company and given operational, because waste is a very local subject, we will be able to jointly identify an organization, an NGO or a private company or a recycler or whoever who can operate this material recovery facility and make sure that they are able to get the revenue from the positive materials that are being sold at high value, but also get enough fund in terms of EPR, which you specifically mentioned, in order to dispose some of these low value plastics or non-recyclable plastics to dispose. So overall, the material that there is a positive material and there is a negative material also. So overall, as a system, that it will become sustainable. That's what we are saying by public private partnership.
Okay, Professor Varshney, your views there on the MRF model, which Mr. Balachandran was explaining about, and also implementing it in a PPP mode. And the third aspect, which is very crucial, you mentioned it in your first response as well, that is involvement of the informal, workforce, which is there, that is rag pickers, which are a very integral part of this overall, problem which we're talking about, and they will have to be part of the solution as well.
No, I think about this model, I have only to say that this is the beginning of the plastic management. And I think many more things have to be done. It is not complete in itself, but I think it's the first step. And to that extent, I would welcome it.
Okay.
But let me just point out two more important things. First is that the user has to be told that where he need not use the plastic in the first place. And I think that emphasis seems to be not as much as it is desired. And I think it is great emphasis should be put on that, and which is all campaigns are lacking in a big way, because it has not been systematically thought about, and therefore it is not being conveyed to the people in general and the informal sector which is using these things. So if the usage can be cut down to begin with, I think the total quantity that we are going to generate will automatically get reduced. The second point in this model, which also need to be elaborated, because nothing starts with complete perfection. It needs improvement. And I think this improvement is only a positive thing if it is taken in the light spirit. For example, when we say recycle, how many times one is expecting to recycle? And what happens finally? It only ends up again in the solid waste dumps.
Okay.
And the third thing which I want to say with great emphasis, that many plastics have different kind of colors. They are highly toxic, and there is no word about them that how to control which kind of colors to be used and not to be used. Even if it is recycled, whether these are going to be ultimately used for storage and containers or for what purpose. Because using the recycling plastic means that its quality keeps on deteriorating, and afterwards it is of not much use. And these are the important things which we have to consider very, very seriously.
Okay.
When we recycle, the concept recycle is that you start from point A and come back to point A. And I think most of the recycling as we are talking in this model, and most of the time talked about in the literature also, is really not recycling in true sense. So I think we have to think of the recycling little more deeply. And I think that these are the steps through which we have to go.
Okay.
But we have to scale the ladder at a much faster pace with a greater understanding. And the third thing that I would like to say, that the research in the plastics and the reuse and recycling has been not very adequate and supported, either here or in the Southeast Asia as a whole. So I think these are some of the things that need to be taken into to really improve this model and to make it work.
Okay.
Every city poses different problem.
Indeed.
And therefore, regional adaptation, city-wise adaptation has to be thought of very significantly, because everything cannot be taken with the same yardstick.
Indeed.
So I think these are some of the things where corporations have to be alert and have some kind of a research and adaptation capacity, which is totally lacking at the present.
Okay.
And thus, even if the model provides very useful guideline, they may still not be able to serve the intended purpose of this model.
Okay, so more improvements are required. Dr. Pandey, do you agree with what Dr. Varshney is saying in terms of, that this is a good step, but we will have to look at various aspects of this problem, and specifically, starting from point A, that is from users' perspective as well. That is, awareness is something which we will have to focus more on. Research is something which we will again have to, give a lot more weightage to, and then we will have to find, proper or unique solutions to the unique problems at specific places.
Yes, I completely agree. And material recovery facility, as promoted by UNDP with public-private partnership, is a good way. Is first right step in that direction. And material recovery facility, if you see, it's not, as said earlier, it's a holistic material sorting center. So it's not only looking at plastics, but also paper, glass, metal. So once they're coming to, once waste is well segregated and all the recyclable material come to recovery facility, they are further graded into various values, because every paper will not have same value. Similarly, every plastic will not have same value, as pointed out by Mr. Balachandran earlier. So how well we sort these out will essentially determine how good the value will be of the processed or recycled product. And finally, whatever can't be recycled or processed, there's a technology option. It can go to cement plants. Cement plant is an alternate fuel, which provides a very exciting possibility. Currently, cement plants are run on coal, and they have been asked to look at alternate fuel. That provides a very exciting possibility to be used as an alternate fuel. And it's reported by CII that all these cement plants can have at least 25% thermal substitution in terms of coal, which can be replaced by these alternate fuels. So there are issues, there are solutions which look exciting at this point of time.
And they will have to be explored further as well. Mr. Balachandran, your concluding comments on what Dr. Varshney was pointing out and what Dr. Pandey is also saying in terms of thinking about more out-of-the-box solutions, that's one, obviously, but in tune with what the problems are at different levels and different areas, looking at data in a more holistic manner, focusing more on research, and obviously not letting go of the focus on user awareness.
Absolutely. I think I can't agree more. This is just the beginning. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We need to go a long way, and we need to start at the right place. We need to start. We need to start at the right place also, but we also need to start parallelly in other places as well. We cannot wait for awareness to build up on the other parts of the plastic recycling, because it's being generated every day as we speak. The 3.4 million tons that you mentioned in the beginning of this call. So we need to parallelly work on awareness, more emphasis on awareness, out-of-the-box thinking, but also finding out to strengthen the other end of the supply chain, which is actually recycling, and making sure more recycled plastic is being used, which the government is now promoting, to actively use recycled products in various parts of different industries and products that are consumed by consumers. So that will create a demand, and that will also emphasize that the quality of recycling and the quality of waste management in the country will overall improve over the period of years, and we will all make our small contribution into that grand vision as a country. So thank you very much.
Indeed, Mr. Balachandran, thank you so much. That is really important, and all this will also have to be looked at it from collecting data, specific data, and focusing more on research, as Dr. Varshney was also pointing out. Thank you so much, Dr. Varshney, Mr. Balachandran, and Dr. Pandey as well for sharing your views and insight. As our experts were pointing out, it's a very challenging issue, but a good positive beginning has been made in terms of trying to identify what the challenges are, and there are various aspects of ensuring sustainable management of plastic waste. The most important amongst them is, of course, making the user aware about, more aware about as to how to go about using plastics, how to go about disposing plastics as well. And then comes, obviously, the recycling or the management, waste management part. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.